Top 10 war zones.
War has shaped civilizations and shattered them. Some see it as necessary, a tool to stop tyrants, to defend freedom, or to drive human advancement. But when the bombs fall and the troops march, there's always another side to the battlefield: the money trail. After World War II, America emerged as a global superpower and the world's largest arms dealer. At first, it was a matter of national security. We had just defeated fascism, and now we were facing down communism. The Cold War turned defense into a permanent industry. Contractors multiplied, budgets soared. And by the time the Korean War began, companies like Lockheed, Boeing, and General Dynamics weren't just making weapons. They were shaping foreign policy. But in the shadows of those massive contracts and military bases, another force began to take hold. One with far less oversight, one that operated not on the battlefield, but in the halls of Congress: the lobbyist. On June 25, 1950, the Korean War began, with the U.S. backing South Korea and China and the Soviet Union supporting North Korea. President Harry Truman's administration expanded military spending by passing laws in the name of national security. However, the kind of embedded defense industry lobbying we now see had not yet gained its indelible foothold. Weapons industries such as Lockheed Martin had not made their move yet. For now, the war seemed to be fought in the interest of containing communism. But as long as there is war, there is profit. And soon, powerful individuals would discover that war could be humanity's most lucrative business.
The friendly-looking fellow greeting a pair of generals is not quite as harmless as the permanent smile on his face might indicate. He's the soldier of the future. The Army calls him nothing less than its ultimate weapon. On public display for the first time, he shows citizens of the nation's capital what the well-dressed GI will wear. A rocket-powered jump belt for 30-foot leaps and a two-way radio give him range of movement and communication. Infrared binoculars swing down to give him vision at night. Altogether, his outfit shields him against small arms fire and the effects of nuclear explosion.
The years following the Korean War were marked by America's effort to expand and consolidate military bases across the Western Hemisphere. Since the 1950s, the U.S. Department of Defense tasked the Navy with bolstering Southeast Asia's military infrastructure to resist communism. Vietnam became the focal point. While the intervention was framed by the domino theory, the belief that if one country fell to communism, others would follow, the true incentive was often profit and control. By the 1960s, Pacific naval bases had a budget of $1.9 billion. As the Vietnam War escalated, military spending followed. One major example was RMK-BRJ, a construction conglomerate contracted by the U.S. government to build South Vietnam's military infrastructure. The initial budget for RMK-BRJ was a staggering $1 billion, a 50% increase in regional military expenditures. Under the agreement, Vietnamese laborers would receive free construction materials and pay under U.S. contractor supervision. By 1966, over $200 million from the contract went unaccounted for. Officially, it was attributed to internal issues. In reality, the money had been siphoned off by defense contractors. Despite the shortfall, officials praised RMK-BRJ for persevering through a money deficit. The missing funds were never recovered, and although the Vietnam War officially ended in 1975, The financial leakage started long before. In the end, RMKBRJ became a case study in how massive war budgets could be exploited without consequence. On March 29, 1973, the last U.S. troops left South Vietnam. Just 2 years later, on April 30, 1975, Saigon fell to North Vietnamese forces. Billions had been spent. Tens of thousands of lives were lost. And the so-called war to stop communism had, once again, enriched the military-industrial complex. Although Vietnam was not the clearest case of lobbying-driven warfare, it set the stage. It led to the Nixon Doctrine in 1969, which promised to support U.S. allies with military aid rather than direct troop deployment. This approach became a goldmine for defense contractors. It legitimized war by proxy under the guise of defending democracy. From there, things escalated. In the late 1970s, America rushed to support Israel during the Yom Kippur War. Though this move was framed as humanitarian, it aggravated relations with Middle Eastern nations. The 1973 OPEC oil embargo and the 1979 Iranian hostage crisis were direct consequences of that meddling. During Jimmy Carter's presidency, the defense budget swelled to $2.4 trillion. That included over $60 billion for the failed Star Wars Missile Defense Initiative, money that was ultimately embezzled or wasted. Meanwhile, the Carter Doctrine, amplified by industry lobbyists, sent billions of dollars in weapons to Mujahideen fighters in Afghanistan. That intervention, intended to bleed the Soviet Union, instead birthed the Taliban. In the post-war chaos, the U.S. abandoned Afghanistan, creating a power vacuum that terrorists would fill. When American weapons came back to haunt U.S. forces, the cycle of profit and bloodshed continued. To close the century, the Reagan-era Iran-Contra affair exposed the relationship between lobbyists, defense funding, and covert foreign interventions. Millions were illegally funneled to rebels in Nicaragua, a scandal that momentarily lifted the curtain on the scale of corruption. On September 11, 2001, terrorists attacked the United States, killing thousands and devastating New York City. The tragedy marked the beginning of the war on terror. While the public demanded justice, politicians and contractors saw opportunity. The U.S. invaded Afghanistan in late 2001. By 2002, public discontent over the war was growing, but instead of reassessing, the Bush administration doubled down, relying heavily on defense contractors like Lockheed Martin. These companies didn't just build weapons, they helped shape the war. A new cycle emerged. Private defense companies paid lobbyists, who influenced lawmakers to pass pro-war legislation. In return, those companies received massive government contracts. This isn't theory, it's documented fact. Now, lobbying isn't unique to the defense industry.
Moments later, Mr. McCoy will become one of the first ever executives to claim that ExxonMobil has aggressively fought climate science using front organizations to maximize shareholder profit.
Did we aggressively fight against some of the science? Yes. Did we join some of these shadow groups to work against some of the early efforts? Yes, that's true. But there's nothing illegal about that. We were looking out for our investments. We were looking out for our shareholders.
Declarations show that Senator Manchin has received tens of thousands of dollars from ExxonMobil and its trade associations. Keith McCoy names 10 other senators as crucial to ExxonMobil. Senators Mark Kelly, Chris Coons, Shelley Moore Capito, Kirsten Sinema, John Tester, Maggie Hassan, John Barrasso, Steve Daines, John Cornyn, and Marco Rubio. All bar Kelly and Hassan have taken money from Exxon totaling $117,000. We gave all these senators a chance to respond. None did so.
It's everywhere. Big oil, big pharma, big tech. Even frozen food companies hire lobbyists to sway lawmakers. But in the defense world, lobbying doesn't just influence policy. It determines who we go to war with, how long we stay, what weapons we buy, and who profits from every bullet fired. This has been happening for over half a century. In 1969, Nixon introduced the Nixon Doctrine. Instead of deploying troops, the U.S. would arm and fund allies to fight on our behalf. On paper, it looked cheaper. In practice, it meant billions in weapons deals and virtually unchecked profits for contractors. In 2023, a report from Senator Elizabeth Warren revealed that over 530 former high-ranking government officials were working for defense contractors. More than half were registered lobbyists. The rest? Consultants, advisors, strategic partners. It's a revolving door. The more we invest in war, the more powerful these companies become. And the more powerful they become, the more they shape future conflicts to justify that investment. After September 11th, the U.S. launched the most expensive military campaign in history. Trillions of dollars. 2 decades of war. The results? Yes, Saddam Hussein was overthrown. Yes, Osama bin Laden was killed. But Iraq and Afghanistan remain unstable. Civilian deaths number in the hundreds of thousands. Veteran suicides have skyrocketed. And military contractors have never been richer. Halliburton made nearly $40 billion in Iraq. Lockheed Martin's stock more than tripled. Raytheon, maker of airstrike missiles, posted record profits. These are not accidents. This is the business model. When scrutiny arose, Washington responded with optics. In 2007, Congress passed the Honest Leadership and Open Government Act to limit lobbyist influence. But loopholes quickly undermined it. Former officials simply rebranded as consultants, bypassed waiting periods, and resumed business as usual. Super PACs and bundling operations legally funneled millions into campaigns. And lawmakers serving on defense committees still accepted money from the very contractors they were meant to oversee. While defense spending surpassed $840 billion, public schools closed. Teachers worked second jobs. Health care remained out of reach for millions. And the climate crisis, arguably our greatest national security threat, received less than 2% of the Pentagon's budget. This isn't about being anti-military. It's about demanding accountability. National defense should protect people, not stock prices. Because every drone strike, every arms deal, every prolonged war echoes with the voice of someone who was paid to make it happen. And maybe that's the hardest truth of all. America's foreign policy has been shaped not just by threats abroad, but by influence at home. The question is no longer whether lobbying has too much power. The question is, what are we going to do about it? Because the defense industry says it protects America. But who protects America from the defense industry?